I don't like violence, for sure, but sometimes, yeah, there is no other way. The violence is needed because there needs to change, something needs to change.
Goedenavond allemaal, we zijn nu live vanuit...
Meet Ricardo. He live-streamed this protest in Rotterdam last Friday on Facebook. It became violent. This was one of several rallies that turned nasty across the Netherlands over the weekend. The protesters, angry about new COVID restrictions and vaccine passes, hurled stones and set cars alight. The police opened fire. Ricardo runs an anti-vaccine, anti-lockdown Facebook page. It rallied protesters on Friday.
In a few days, the followers are more than doubled since last Thursday. Last Thursday there was another demonstration, a strike in the harbor here. Then it started. I had a lot of views from the video that day also, but a lot more last Friday.
His page is part of a network of Dutch anti-vaccine groups on Facebook with tens of thousands of members. These groups are rife with misleading claims that vaccines are poisonous or part of sinister global plots to kill people that are worlds apart from medical discussions and political criticism. Those running these groups say their protest movement is peaceful, but there are also many comments supportive of and encouraging violence. Do you think that the rallies will become more violent? I've seen there are some planned for November, for December.
Yeah, there are a lot of plans. I'm sure that it will become more violent.
Ricardo believes, without evidence, that undercover police agitators were the ones that caused violence at these rallies. But at the same time, he welcomes the clashes. If other people come to harm, they are hurt or injured or killed, would you feel responsible for that, having said that violence might be one of the only ways?
No. The only people that are guilty about this is the government.
Ricardo's group and other anti-vaccine activists aren't the only people taking part in these rallies. Many, including those who played no part in the violence, are frustrated at fresh restrictions.
The vandalism or the violence that was initiated in Rotterdam on Friday night was largely put down to groups of youths who are no doubt disaffected or disgruntled or frustrated with the conditions in the country. So these kinds of protests organised by these groups allow for a large gathering of people.
But experts also think Dutch anti-vaccine groups, which have swelled in numbers on both Facebook and Telegram over the course of this year, have created a forum of violent threats that can then be exploited by those out to cause trouble. Facebook has rules against encouraging violence and anti-vaccine propaganda. So why are these groups allowed to rally supporters on the social network?
The assumption that researchers like myself would make that, or a question that we would ask, is Facebook failing to take action against non-English language communities? We often see that misinformation or disinformation that might be taken down or might be flagged in English language communities on Facebook, it travels around the world in multiple different languages and doesn't face the same level of scrutiny or attention from fact-checking organizations. In the Netherlands, this is true.
Facebook does have Dutch-speaking moderators, but there are concerns about how it monitors content in foreign languages. That's been highlighted by whistleblower Francis Haugen.
As the civic misinformation product manager, I was responsible for misinformation in places that didn't have third-party fact-checking. So we hear a lot about how Facebook is invested in misinformation. They have this international fact-checking program. The reality is the vast majority of places in the world, the vast majority of languages in the world, do not have any third-party fact-checking.
Meta, which owns Facebook, told Newsnight that it's investigating the groups that we flagged and that it removes harmful misinformation and content that incites violence when it becomes aware of it. It says it's monitoring the situation in the Netherlands and that it's in touch with police there. For now, calm is restored, but more rallies are planned, and protesters continue to mobilise on Facebook.
Marianna Spring there. Well, we're joined now by Imran Ahmed, CEO of the Centre for Countering Digital Hate. And just to get a sort of wider picture on this, Imran, do you see this as an anti-vax movement in itself, or is this a conspiracy movement which has latched on to the anti-vax issue?
Well, good evening. I mean, I think it's both things, that it is obviously an evolution of the anti-vax groups that have grown in size, scale around the world over the pandemic, driven in part by the extraordinary anxiety that we've all felt. Conspiracism is driven by what's called epistemic anxiety. It's just a sort of a desperate desire to know for certain. And of course, with a novel pathogen, a new disease, causing a pandemic that's taking millions of lives, people are slightly heightened in terms of their anxiety. So that the conspiracism that underpins anti-vax sentiment has taken hold, but we're now seeing convergence with other forces. So we're seeing it converging with white supremacism, with the what used to be called the QAnon cult. And of course, you know, QAnon, like any millenarian cult, now that the end days haven't come, that Trump wasn't re-elected, they're looking for something else to do. And they've been hybridizing, they've been converging and building new conspiracy theories with anti-vaxxers.
So I guess, I mean, my question then is, do you have to combat this by vaccine education or by something more complicated, which is about changing algorithms or regulating media posts?
It's an old aphorism of countering cult behavior, misinformation, conspiracy theories, that it's really difficult to counter misinformation with facts. And that's not a satisfying thought. It's quite a difficult thought for most of us to accept. But the reality is that these are about almost identity groups. They achieve that level of salience to people's identity, to believe these conspiracies, to feel part of a community that's seen the light, so to speak. And as we see them move into this phase, now look, they're in a new phase, clearly, they're mobilized, which means that they're not just believing extremist ideas or completely bananas ideas, they're also at a point where they're saying they have to do something about it. And that's a really dangerous phase. There is now risk to life, serious risk to life, including to public health professionals.
And the point that Marianna was making in her piece was that Facebook and others are in danger of missing this because, quite simply, they don't have the linguists. If it's happening in Dutch or if it's happening in languages that are not English, then they're not policing it in the same way with the same vigilance that they would be, say, if it was going on in America.
I mean, I live in Washington, D.C., and believe me, they're not doing a terribly good job in the United States in cleaning up conspiracism, hate and misinformation. One only has to watch the news. Whether it is January the 6th or it is the ongoing crisis of under-vaccination and anti-vaxxers in the United States. But you're right that there is actually a differential. If you thought we had it bad in the UK or the US, just wait till you see the rest of the world that doesn't speak English. And Facebook have, for the main part, done an appalling job of dealing with these groups. Look, the particular group that's organizing this on Facebook, we won't mention its name. It has 48,000 followers in its group in Facebook. It has 20,000 followers of the hashtag on it, posts on its hashtag on Instagram. What it does is it lifeboats people over to harder bits of the internet, Telegram, for example, where there are channels with 75,000 followers. And they have been coordinating actively the things that are going on, all under the nose of Facebook, because we've, of course, reported it to them. And so it is extraordinary to think that even though they have known for some time that there is a specific group in which the worldwide demonstrations are being coordinated, there is nevertheless no action from platforms who frankly care more about their bottom line than public health.
Well, we've seen, I should say, the statement